Many of you are probably used to messages such as these.
This is your brain. This is drugs. This is your brain on drugs.
Actually, that's an egg frying. This, on the other hand, is your brain on drugs, specifically psilocybin. So, let's talk about drugs. By definition, a drug is any substance that has known physiological effects on humans or animals. This ranges from anything from caffeine to cocaine. And generally, we like to think of drugs as existing in two major categories: pharmaceuticals, the good kind, and recreational drugs, which we like to think of as the bad kind. So what I'm about to say may surprise you, but there are actually no known physiological effects or chemical differences between these two classes of drugs. The only thing that differentiates them is the intention of the user. In fact, each year, more people die from simple pain relievers than all illegal drugs combined. And of those caused by illegal drugs, most are due to street narcotics such as heroin and cocaine. Almost none are due to psychedelics. Psychedelics are a psychoactive drug whose main action is to alter our cognition and perception. This is typically done through agonizing serotonergic receptors in the brain. These types of drugs include LSD, MDMA, psilocybin mushrooms, and marijuana. The function of stimulating the serotonergic circuitry is to enhance communication between our cortex and our thalamus. The thalamus is responsible for receiving information from our sensory inputs, and our cortex is responsible for making sense of these inputs and giving us our conscious perception of reality. Before psychedelics were made illegal, nearly half a century ago, clinical studies on psychedelics actually led to the discovery of the serotonergic pathway. Today, serotonin is thought to lead to our feelings of well-being and happiness, and is used to treat a variety of different mental illnesses, from psychosis to depression. So let's take a look at our society's perception of psychedelic drug use through history in the United States. When we think about psychedelics, we tend to think of the 60s. What most people don't realize is that the 60s was the decade of recreational psychedelic use. Before that, the medical community thought there was great hope that LSD could revolutionize psychiatry. Today, experts say that this hope may have not been misplaced. So you might ask, if researchers already knew by the early 50s, more than 60 years ago, that LSD and other psychedelics had incredible potential to treat mental illness, why has there been limited additional research done on what could be the penicillin of psychiatry? Well, this happened. Psychedelics moved out of mainstream medical use and into recreational use. Because LSD and the anti-war movement became so closely intertwined, the government was eager to control its use. In an attempt to contain this chaos, the government banned LSD. However, in order to ban LSD, they associated it with extreme risks. The most believable danger being that you would get addicted to LSD, when in fact there are no physiological addictive properties of LSD. This fear was inserted into the minds of American people via ads like you saw at the beginning of this video, and this one.
Smoking the soul-destroying reefer, they find a moment's pleasure, but at a terrible price. Debauchery, violence, murder, suicide, and the ultimate end of the marijuana addict. Hopeless insanity. See this important bill now, before it is too late.
Even though we laugh at these ridiculous ads now, these perhaps illegitimate fears are still prevalent in our society and affect our perception of psychedelic drug use to this day. This fear is reflected in our legislation. The Comprehensive Drug Abuse Prevention and Control Act of 1970, signed by President Nixon, classified drugs into 5 major categories, ranging from most harmful to least harmful. Marijuana and most psychedelic drugs are classified as Schedule I drugs, defining them as having high potential for abuse and no accepted medical use or treatment. Now, I don't know about you, but I would be much more concerned if my child was doing meth, which happens to be a Schedule II drug, than smoking a joint, which is a Schedule I. So why should we care so much about society's perception of psychedelic drugs? Well, because our need to categorize drugs as pharmaceutical good drugs or recreational dangerous drugs, we may have been hindering our ability to treat mental illness for the past 40 years. Fortunately, in spite of the current restrictions on these drugs, there has been a push for research for the potential of medical benefits from psychedelic drug use. MAPS, the Multidisciplinary Association for Psychedelic Drug Studies, is a non-profit research and education organization that develops medical, legal, and cultural contexts for people to benefit from the careful uses of psychedelics and marijuana. Researchers in these organizations believe that psychedelics in psychiatry sessions could cure patients with mental illness such as post-traumatic stress disorder and depression in as few as 3 to 4 sessions. Not only is that a cure for an illness that doctors currently only treat, it's fast and affordable. Currently, MAPS is undertaking a roughly $20 million project to make MDMA an FDA-approved prescription medicine by 2021. However, organizations such as these face challenges posed by lingering stigmas associated with these drugs. Researchers at MAPS have stated that they heavily avoid using terms that may come across as hippie-ish when presenting their research in order to avoid some of the negative connotations associated with these terms. Even though researchers believe that words such as bliss and enlightenment could and should be used to describe mental states that can be achieved via the drug, they know that if they want to be taken seriously, they need to present their research in a very conservative manner. Pharmaceutical companies aren't the easiest sale to begin with. Why would they want to sell 4 doses of MDMA or LSD when they could sell a lifetime supply of antidepressants or anti-anxiety drugs? In order for these drugs to be available for use in psychiatry, society needs to get on board. As one of my favorite philosophers once said, in order to make it through times like these, we must have open-minded skepticism. And thank you for joining me on this trip through time.
Woo! Put that in the bloopers.
Yeah, they'd be like, thanks for joining me on this trip through time.
Ooh, really?
Now who wants to use some drugs? A video of you. Let me zoom in.
Okay.
Oh.